Throughout Author Awareness April, I started across the pond in Scotland, made my way west to the East Coast, then to Southern California, and then to the Central Valley. Now I'm bringing in an author from my own hometown. This month I'm interviewing an artist, poet, and writer that I've come to know over the last couple of years. He's incredibly talented, so please join me in welcoming Phillip Nunes for the final interview of Season 8. All right, welcome, Phillip, to the show. I am so excited to finally have you on for an interview. Tell my audience what it is that you write and all about your book.
Certainly, thank you, Garrett. I really appreciate you having me on. I'm very excited to be on with you today and tell you all about my book. So, like you said, my name is Phillip Nunes, and today I'll be talking about my book, The Night Owl and the Chrysalis. This is a book that I had published in 2024, right at the end of the year. It's one that I also illustrated myself, and it's my first published book. It's actually a poem that I had written, and while writing it, I decided that I was going to share it with people. I thought that it was so important to share, and it didn't feel like a story that I had to really reach to write. It really came to me, so I figured since this story was kind of given to me to write, I better share it with people. So once I did, I was prompted and encouraged to illustrate it and to publish it. So I spent about 2.5 years prepping that, and finally got it published in 2024.
How did you get started into writing? Because for as long as I've known you, you were an artist. You've done. I've seen some of the art that you've done for Free Comic Book Day and some of the other events where we bumped into each other. How did you get into writing? Was this something that you've always wanted to do, or you just like you were mentioning just before, you had this story, it needed to be told, and you had to just follow that direction?
Right. So there's not really a simple answer to it. So I'll give you the long-winded one, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
Well, ever since I was a kid, I remember in first grade, Armona Elementary School, my class would be prompted by our elementary school teacher, Mrs. Weatherly, to write a journal and to illustrate with it. And it was my favorite thing to look forward to in class, and it was at the beginning of every day, so I just really had a field day with that. And I remember every weekend, I think on Sunday nights, my family would get together and we would watch like the featured movie on ABC channel 30. And so we'd watch, Jurassic Park and all of these action movies that I really loved. And the most outstanding one was Zorro with Antonio Banderas. I think it was The Mask of Zorro or The Legend of Zorro. I can't remember exactly which. The first one that came out.
Yeah.
So I remember going to school so excited to write about this adventure that I'd heard about just the day before. So I get to school on Monday and I write all about it, and I kind of continue this story about Zorro from the movie into my own imagination and into my own perception of that story as a child. And I illustrate it. And so from there on, I continued illustrating. I continued drawing. I really enjoyed that you could take this concept, this visual concept, from your mind and put it on a page to visually tell a story. And that was simply because I had a love for storytelling in and of itself. So I continued writing. I continued to seek out any teachers that would really prompt me to do that. And, continuing through school, I had so many wonderful teachers that shared a love for literature with me. So I was able to take even like honors English classes and really just dig into this literature, not only reading it, but analyzing it. And I was able to apply that into my own writings. Just coming to this particular book, The Night Owl and the Chrysalis, 2020 came around, and I had been working in Orlando, Florida, with Disney at the Disney parks. The master craftsman of the past few generations has been Walt Disney and his crew. So from there, I was anticipating continuing with a job with Disney and getting into their creative studios and everything. But right around that time, COVID happened, right at the beginning of that year. And so the shutdowns kind of brought me back to California. Within a year, I was pretty much ready to get out of the house. And so I was able to take up a seasonal job up in Glacier National Park the great outdoors, and it just really allowed me to thrive and to find a nice piece up there where I was able to write and work on my artwork whenever I needed to in between work. And this one guy, he had been he had been a part of the Mennonite community, and he spent a lot of time outdoors his most of his life, and it was really tough for him to be shut into a cabin. And he didn't show any symptoms at all of being sick. He had just hung out with the guy once in passing, who actually had been sick. So I went and I paid him a visit to his window, and I just wanted to make sure everything was okay for him, make sure that he had all his amenities and everything. And I saw this guy for about a week or two in isolation for the most part, and he was going through something really tough that a lot of people had gone through at the time. And so I saw him kind of dip down into an unfortunate depression, and then he ended up persevering. But the entire time I saw this young man in a cabin, and I saw a caterpillar and a chrysalis in a cocoon, and he was growing. He was going through this personal, very very self growth, personal development. And I felt like this night owl that would be there, every night, just checking in. Hey, you doing okay, man? Is there anything that I can get you? The outside world's still here. Don't worry, you're gonna make it through, and you're gonna be better when you come through. You're gonna be better for it, really. So what happened was I decided all I can do in this situation is write about it, and I didn't have a clue what I was gonna write. So I just ended up taking out my phone and writing in my notes, and it came out as a poem, and it came out as a poem about a night owl and a chrysalis. And I finished about half of it when the whole crew came out of isolation. A few people left. The summer went on, and everyone was okay. And I was skateboarding one day, and I did a little bit of downhill skateboarding, and I ended up falling off and rolling my ankle. The great thing is that this young man who I was visiting his window, he'd come to my room when I was bedridden, and he'd check in on me every day too. So it kind of came full circle, and I ended up finishing the latter half of my book.
So you kind of touched on the next question, which is dealing with inspiration, because obviously you were inspired by what you were experiencing in Glacier National Park and the people that you were interacting with. What are some of your other inspirations?
I'm really glad you asked. Movies are huge for me. It's just something that, raised by cinema, sort of. So that lends its hand to what really got me into the artwork element and continuing my writing and storytelling was the movie X-Men from 2000. I ended up really falling in love with the characters of that movie. I thought, I growing up in the '90s. I would watch the TV show, the X-Men the '90s series, and when I saw it translated into film, into live action, it wasn't just that translation into live action, but I think that prompted them to make it feel real, make it feel believable, and really amp up those character traits and with phenomenal actors and everything. So that led me into enjoying the characters on such a deep level that I wanted to read the comic books.
Yeah.
And so reading those comic books, while the visuals and everything are an incredible medium, the stories themselves carry a huge weight. So I was introduced to many awesome authors, writers through comic books. One would be Bendis, Straczynski, and just a plethora of so many authors. I know I would miss a ton of really great ones if I just continued shooting through, but Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale are two phenomenal artists. Jeff Loeb was the writer, and he paired up so well with Tim Sale, which was the illustrator for books like The Long Halloween, which is a Batman graphic novel.
Writing during a pandemic there gives you a lot of time, but at the same time, it's hard to find people to really connect with and socialize with to give you additional feedback. But then you're having to write while you're recovering from a twisted ankle. That can't be fun at all. So like, what are some of the other challenges that you've encountered?
Sure. Other than those, I'm gonna say, and this is probably, there's a couple of them, but the first and biggest one, I think, not just for me, but I'm gonna go ahead and say a majority of writers and creators is my own inner critic. That's the biggest thing that has held me back from a majority of ventures that I'd like to pursue in my life creatively. And I think that the challenge there leads to something that in the writer's world, many people refer to as writer's block. I believe it's the root cause is being a critic first and saving creator for last. It's sort of topsy-turvy to the true solution, which is what we're meant to be, is a creator first, an absolute creator, and throwing the critic back a couple of seats and saying, I can revisit you later. I can always edit my work. But right now I don't need to be thinking about the reader necessarily when you're first stepping into a creative project. I don't need to be thinking about my friends or my family's reaction to this, because as a creator, we have a duty and a responsibility to whatever that is inside us that I believe every person has, to tell a story and to honor that story, and to whether that story is played out through a dance or through a painting on canvas or through your typewriter in written word. Like Stan Lee said, he was questioned about his writing Spider-Man. I don't really believe that he himself wrote this in. I think it was someone else who wrote it when he was on vacation. But he was questioned about Gwen Stacy's death, and it upset everybody. And so Stanley was questioned. You write these fictional serial comic books for the youth, but you give them such adult issues to deal with. That's not necessarily stuff written for kids. And his answer was, I don't write for the kids. I write for me.
You actually kind of touched on the next question I was going to ask, which was talking about advice for writers, and I think you hit the nail on the head that we should be writing for ourselves first before we consider our audience. And then the publishing tips that you offered are great, because a lot of people, they go into this idea of, okay, well, I've written my story, I want to get it published, but they haven't gone through the proper, I don't want to say proper, but they haven't done the homework necessary to make sure that they're going down the right path with it.
I think integrity for the work is huge, and
Yeah.
if an author isn't going to stand by it, the fans will, but the fans aren't up on the front lines when it comes to collaborating with other creators. I mean, big
Yeah.
production companies have a responsibility as well, but the first and last line of defense, I believe, will be the one who holds the IP, the author.
We're coming up to the end of the interview, Phil.
Sure, sure.
Go ahead and tell the viewers how they can connect with you and where they can get copies of The Night Owl and the Chrysalis.
Got you. Yes. So the best way to contact me would be through Instagram, with the handle being Phillip Nunes 57. That's Philip with two L's and Nunes spelled with an S, 57. And Night Owl and the Chrysalis is exclusively sold online. It's exclusively sold at lulu.com. It can also currently be found at the Moon Room in Hanford, at the Hanford Mall. And if I could just throw in one last tip for writers that I'd like to, I'd say one of the biggest tips that I had forgotten to give to you is that as a writer who writes narrative work, if you're really looking for that beginning, middle, and end, when you start a story, I would suggest starting by asking a question that you feel needs to be answered and explored. And that is the basis of your story. That's where your story begins. That's where your first scene starts, with asking a question. And by the end of the story, it will lead your readers to being able to find an answer.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining me, Phil. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show.
Oh, likewise, Garrett. Thank you so much.